You by Mind's Eye.
Coming up next, gazing into the mind's eye with mice, how neuroscientists are seeing human vision more clearly. Holiday recipes from the ACB Braille Forum, plus technology, accessibility, health, and community news from Mind's Eye Radio. This is the Blindness and Disability News Hour. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the holiday edition of the Blindness and Disability News Hour. This edition covers the week of December 21st, 2025. I hope everyone is well as the holidays are upon us, and we've got lots of interesting stories for you this week, so let's get started. Our first story this week comes from Seattle Pie, and you can find them online at seattlepi.com. Gazing into the mind's eye with mice, how neuroscientists are seeing human vision more clearly. And this is originally published in The Conversation, which is an independent and nonprofit source of news, analysis, and commentary from academic experts. It was written by Bilal Haider, Associate Professor of Biomedical Engineering at the Georgia Institute of Technology, and it was first published on December 16th. Despite the nursery rhyme about 3 blind mice, mouse eyesight is surprisingly sensitive. Studying how mice see has helped researchers discover unprecedented details about how individual brain cells communicate and work together to create a mental picture of the visual world. I am a neuroscientist who studies how brain cells drive visual perception and how these processes can fail in conditions such as autism. My lab listens, that's in quotes, to the electrical activity of neurons in the outermost part of the brain called the cerebral cortex, a large portion of which processes visual information. Injuries to the visual cortex can lead to blindness and other visual defects, even when the eyes themselves are unhurt. Understanding the activity of individual neurons and how they work together while the brain is actively using and processing information is a long-standing goal of neuroscience. Researchers have moved much closer to achieving this goal thanks to new technologies aimed at the mouse visual system. And these findings will help scientists better see how the visual systems of people work. The mind in the blink of an eye. Researchers long thought that vision in mice appeared sluggish with low clarity. But it turns out visual cortex neurons in mice, just like those in humans, monkeys, cats, and ferrets, require specific visual features to trigger activity and are particularly selective in alert and awake conditions. My colleagues and I, and others, have found that mice are especially sensitive to visual stimuli directly in front of them. This is surprising because mouse eyes face outward rather than forward. Forward-facing eyes, like those of cats and primates, naturally have a larger area of focus straight ahead compared to outward-facing eyes. This finding suggests that the specialization of the visual system to highlight the frontal visual field appears to be shared between mice and humans. For mice, a visual focus on what's straight ahead may help them be more responsive to shadows or edges in front of them, helping them to avoid looming predators or better hunt and capture insects for food. Importantly, the center of view is most affected in aging and many visual diseases in people. Since mice also rely heavily on this part of the visual field, they may be particularly useful models to study and treat visual impairment. 1,000 voices drive complicated choices. Advances in technology have greatly accelerated scientific understanding of vision and the brain. Researchers can now routinely record the activity of thousands of neurons at the same time and pair this data with real-time video of a mouse's face, pupil, and body movements. This method can show how behavior interacts with brain activity. It's like spending years listening to a grainy recording of a symphony with one featured soloist, but now you have a pristine recording where you can hear every single musician with a note-by-note readout of every single finger movement. Using these improved methods, researchers like me are studying how specific types of neurons work together during complex visual behaviors. This involves analyzing how factors such as movement, alertness, and the environment influence visual activity in the brain. For example, my lab and I found that the speed of visual signaling is highly sensitive to what actions are possible in the physical environment. If a mouse rests on a disc that permits running, visual signals travel to the cortex faster than if the mouse views the same images while resting in a stationary tube, even when the mouse is totally still in both conditions. In order to connect electrical activity to visual perception, researchers also have to ask a mouse what it thinks it sees. So how have we done this? The last decade has seen researchers debunking long-standing myths about mouse learning and behavior. Like other rodents, mice are surprisingly clever and can learn how to tell researchers about the visual events they perceive through their behavior. For example, mice can learn to release a lever to indicate they have detected that a pattern has brightened or tilted. They can rotate a Lego wheel left or right to move a visual stimulus to the center of a screen like a video game. And they can stop running on a wheel and lick a water spout when they detect the visual scene has suddenly changed. Mice can also use visual cues to focus their visual processing to specific parts of the visual field. As a result, they can move more quickly and accurately respond to visual stimuli that appear in these regions. For example, my team and I found that a faint visual image in the peripheral visual field is difficult for mice to detect. But once they do notice it, and tell us by licking a water spout, their subsequent responses are faster and more accurate. These improvements come at a cost. If the image unexpectedly appears in a different location, the mice are slower and less likely to respond to it. These findings resemble those found in studies on spatial attention in people. My lab also found that particular types of inhibitory neurons, brain cells that prevent activity from spreading, strongly control the strength of visual signals. When we activated a certain inhibitory neurons in the visual cortex of mice, we could effectively erase their perception of an image. These kinds of experiments are also revealing that the boundaries between perception and action in the brain are much less separate than once thought. This means that visual neurons will respond differently to the same image in ways that depend on behavioral circumstances. For example, visual responses differ in if the image will be successfully detected, if it appears while the mouse is moving, or if it appears when the mouse is thirsty or hydrated. Understanding how different factors shape how cortical neurons rapidly respond to visual images will require advances in computational tools that can separate the contribution of these behavioral signals from the visual ones. Researchers also need technologies that can isolate how specific types of brain cells carry and communicate these signals. Data clouds encircling the globe. This surge of research on the mouse visual system has led to a significant increase in the amount of data that scientists can not only gather in a single experiment, but also publicly share among each other. Major national and international research centers focused on unraveling the circuitry of the mouse visual system have been leading the charge in ushering in new optical, electrical, and biological tools to measure large numbers of visual neurons in action. Moreover, they make all the data publicly available, inspiring similar efforts around the globe. This collaboration accelerates the ability of researchers to analyze data, replicate findings, and make new discoveries. Technological advances in data collection and sharing can make the culture of scientific discovery more efficient and transparent, a major data informatics goal of neuroscience in the years ahead. In the past 10 years are anything to go by, I believe such discoveries are just the tip of the iceberg, and the mighty and not so blind mouse can play a leading role in the continuing quest to understand the mysteries of the human brain. For our next article on this week's program, we turn to the American Foundation for the Blind and their publication Access World Magazine, the latest issue thereof. And you can find them online at afb.org. And we're going to go from mice to appliances with the Access World Survey of Appliance Accessibility in 2025 for people who are blind or have low vision. And this survey was conducted and compiled by Aaron Preece. This article aims to serve two purposes: to bring you information on the current state of appliance accessibility for people who are blind or have low vision, and to provide helpful tips and tricks for using artificial intelligence, or AI, to search for information and ensure that information is accurate. For this piece, I used the web search feature of ChatGPT to locate and provide an overview of the information that I will be detailing. With the increasing sophistication of AI-based web searches, using an AI search and then confirming its information can sometimes be more efficient than trying to find all the information manually with a traditional search engine. The key factor is to confirm the AI's information. To demonstrate this in practice, we will go over the information the AI provided me on the currently available accessibility features for large appliances and how I confirmed the data was accurate. The first part of your search will be your prompt, and you will want to be quite detailed here to avoid confusion from the start. You will specifically want to mention that you want the AI to perform a web search, and preferably a deep web search, which increases the chances of gathering complete information and producing detailed feedback. This also ensures that the AI references documents directly and provides links to its sources, allowing you to double-check what it is saying. If it relies only on its internal knowledge from training, hallucinations are far more likely, and verifying where the information comes from becomes harder. For this particular piece, instead of saying something broad like, quote, "Please tell me about appliance accessibility," unquote, I specifically asked the AI to search for, quote, "the latest information on cutting-edge appliance accessibility as of 2025, unquote, and requested a deep web search. This resulted in a thorough search and return of information. The AI took almost 2 minutes to process, which is quite long for an AI search, and gave me some confidence in the depth of the results. At this point, fact-checking the AI is straightforward. I was presented with a sizable document containing detailed information on appliance accessibility, sometimes even straying further than I expected, such as discussing the accessibility of smart TVs. A TV is arguably a large appliance, though not the main focus of what I was looking for. Since the information came from the web search, anything it provided was either directly quoted or interpreted from a linked page. This meant I could immediately follow each link and verify the accuracy myself. In some cases, the AI had to interpret ambiguous material. For example, when discussing tactile stickers in relation to Whirlpool, it referenced an article in Forbes magazine. And you can find that article online at Forbes.com and search for Whirlpool. My reading of the same article suggested the author was speaking generally about tactile stickers rather than confirming that Whirlpool produces them directly. The AI noted the uncertainty and included a qualifier, which prompted me to verify. Because hallucinations in AIs remain a general concern, I am cautious about relying entirely on AI-generated information. However, when the AI provides direct links to each reference, it allows me to essentially perform my own research by reviewing primary sources, but with the advantage of having those sources gathered and summarized in one place. The main takeaways from the search regarding accessibility features for large appliances are as follows. GE, or General Electric, provides or offers a set of tactile stickers created in partnership with the American Printing House for the Blind. The product is called the GE Appliances Access Kit, and it includes more than 400 labels that combine Braille and with tactile icons for people who do not read Braille. For broader accessibility, many appliances rely on smartphone apps or smart speakers such as the Amazon Echo. Samsung provides accessibility information for its home appliances through the SmartThings app, and Samsung specifically mentions TalkBack accessibility within its documentation for using SmartThings with screen readers. The Bosch website includes accessibility information and an, quote, accessibility for blind people who use screen readers, unquote, option on certain pages related to pairing and account setup. This appears to refer to the accessibility of the website itself rather than the Home Connect app. I did not find clear information stating that the app interface is fully accessible for screen readers such as TalkBack or VoiceOver. Because of this, you may want to test the app directly or search for information from other blind or low vision users of the app. LG uses its Think platform, and that's spelled THINQ, to offer a similar app-based control experience while integrating its home smart speakers. On the hardware side, LG offers a product called the Comfort Kit, designed to attach to appliances to make them easier for people with multiple disabilities to use. This includes tactile differentiation that can help blind or low vision users. Samsung approaches accessibility through consistent design principles in its Inclusive Essentials program, which standardizes control layouts so that functions can be identified through multiple senses, such as touch and sound. Beyond company-provided solutions, there are aftermarket tools for making appliances more accessible. Some retrofit speech feedback modules exist for washers and dryers in the European market, though it is unclear whether they are available in the United States. Tactile sticker options, such as the Halos markers, are available through specialty retailers like independent living stores and can be especially useful for users who do not read Braille. Additionally, many blind users continue to rely on analog or partially analog appliances, which can be marked with bump dots and easily memorized. This remains a reliable approach because such appliances cannot lose accessibility due to an app update or connectivity failure. It has been quite a while since our last appliance review, and I was hoping to find more accessibility advancements. However, it is encouraging to see app-controlled devices gaining traction, and companies now acknowledging accessibility within their official documentation. The increased visibility of accessibility considerations in these apps makes it far more likely that blind screen reader or magnification users will be able to operate these appliances effectively. Smart speaker support adds another layer of convenience, especially for tasks that can be handled through voice commands alone. Let's pay a visit to the American Bazaar, and you can find them online at American Bazaar Online. Google plans to launch smart glasses again after a previous failure. This is written by Nilina Sunil, and it was published on December 16th. Google plans to launch smart glasses again in 2026 after its previous attempt to enter the market ended in failure. These smart glasses will be powered by artificial intelligence. The company had unveiled Google Glass in 2013, and it was pulled from the market in 2015. It is now planning to re-enter the market with a cleaner look. This product will let users interact with their AI products, including its chat box Gemini. It plans to launch 2 versions, one designed to aid without any kind of screen, and another which has a display on the glasses themselves. Google did not provide more details about what form the details will take. Technology analyst Paolo Pescatore told the BBC the tech firm, quote, must avoid the pitfalls of its previous failed attempt. Arguably, the move was ahead of its time, poorly conceived and executed. Now it represents an opportune moment thanks to the success of Gemini, unquote. In order to succeed, the product will have to avoid the pitfalls of its predecessor. Google Glass was launched in 2013 as a pair of thin, wireframe glasses with a chunky right arm to accommodate a camera built into the corner of the right lens. Users could use the camera to take images and record their surroundings, while also interacting with a digital display. The device had been heavily hyped during its initial release. However, after its launch, there were concerns about its impact on privacy and potential for abuse. Questions about its usefulness also came up and grew until Google said that it would stop making them in that form in 2015. A revamped version, Google Glass Enterprise, appeared 2 years later but was retired in 2023. Google founder Sergey Brin recently said that launching Google Glass was, quote, a mistake, unquote. He said the company tried to, quote, commercialize it too quickly before making it cost-effective and polished, unquote, from a commercial standpoint. Google's new product will face competition from Meta, which had earlier made waves with its smart glasses, 2 million pairs of which were sold as of last February. Meta unveiled its AI-powered glasses earlier this year, having built on its existing collaborations with luxury eyewear brands Ray-Ban and Oakley. According to market research firm Counterpoint Research, the sector saw a surge in the first half of 2025, driven by demand for Meta's devices and the launch of similar products by smaller brands. The firm says sales of AI glasses have grown more than 250% compared to the previous year. For our next article, let's take a look at the current issue of Miami News from the Miami University of Ohio. You can find them at miamioh.edu/news. Popular influencer's TikTok video spotlights Miami University's accessible foot button elevators. Dan Darkow, director of the Miller Center for Student Disability Services, is credited with advocating for universal design. This was written by Margot Rutledge Kissel and published on December 17th. Dan Darkow, director of the Miller Center for Student Disability Services, said he was genuinely shocked when he was first sent a TikTok video praising Miami University's accessible elevator at Shriver Center that features floor panel buttons. The glowing review came from influencer Shane Burkaw, who, along with his wife Hannah Burkaw, are known to their 634,000 social media followers as Squirmy and Grubs. Darkow, who is a Master of Arts in 2017, credited with advocating for enhanced elevator accessibility at Shriver and elsewhere on campus, said the video came after the center welcomed the popular influences to Miami for a conversation called Breaking Barriers, a conversation with Squirmy and Grubs. Shane Burkow, who has spinal muscular atrophy, runs a blog and nonprofit organization dedicated to enhancing the quality of life for individuals with disabilities and providing medical equipment to people with neuromuscular diseases. He shared his experience using the accessible elevator at Shriver Center. Quote, I'm about to use an elevator completely by myself for the first time ever, thanks to adaptation, he said in the TikTok video, as he demonstrated the exterior floor panel buttons showing up and down. But wait, there's more, he said as he entered the elevator, in which wheelchair users can use a wheel to select the floor they would like to go to, because the floors are numbered on the interior floor panel buttons. Burkhardt demonstrated using the wheel to select going down to the first floor. Quote, "Wow, that's so cool. I wish every elevator on Earth had foot buttons. That would be so helpful," unquote, he said in the video. Darkow, who advocated for getting the floor panel buttons installed, said, quote, "I had no idea they had captured that video while visiting, and was excited to see how they appreciated the intentional design we brought to campus. Hannah and Shane have incredible reach from their social media platforms, and I was glad Miami could be featured in implementing universal design." And he added, "We currently have these types of elevators in Shriver, Armstrong, and the Clinical Health Services building." For our next story, let's pay a visit to The Good News Room, and you can find them online at thegoodnewsroom.org. The Xavier Society for the Blind celebrates 125 years of bringing faith to life through Braille. And this is written by Stephen Schrankert and published on December 16th. Founded in 1900, the Society continues its mission of making Catholic materials accessible to the visually impaired. For 125 years, the Xavier Society for the Blind has pursued a singular mission, ensuring that blind and visually impaired Catholics have the same access to their faith as their sighted peers. On December 14th, the organization celebrated its milestone anniversary with a Mass at St. Patrick's Cathedral, marking more than a century of vital service. Quote, "That's what inspired Margaret Coffey and Father Joseph Stadelman to start our mission 125 years ago," unquote. Malachi Fallon, executive director of the Xavier Society for the Blind, told The Good News Room in a telephone interview. Quote, "So things have changed in the way we produce Braille, but is still at the heart of our mission," unquote. The anniversary Mass, celebrated by Cardinal Timothy Dolan along with Father Jamie Dennis, a blind priest from Kentucky who serves as one of the Society's patrons, coincided with the Feast of St. Lucy, patron saint of the blind. The cost and necessity of accessibility. At the heart of the Xavier Society's work is producing Catholic materials in Braille, large print, and audio formats, all provided free of charge. The Society's newly updated Braille Bible spans 30 volumes and costs approximately $1,700 to produce each set. Quote, "Not only is it expensive, but these materials are not available in Braille from any other source," Fallon explained. "So it's not just a matter of cost, it's a matter of availability. That's why I think our mission has endured for 125 years," unquote. The organization produces everything from Mass propers to complete Bibles, and the contemporary works like Pope Francis's recent autobiography, Hope. Production costs can run several $1,000s between transcription and embossing, the technical term for printing Braille on paper. While technology has transformed how the Xavier Society operates, from the original New York Point raised print to modern Braille, the fundamental mission remains unchanged. Quote, "Rather than doing everything in-house now, we work with quite a few freelance transcribers to make sure that we can fulfill all the requests that we receive from our patrons," unquote, Fallon said. Adapting technology while preserving tradition. The organization partners with the National Library Service for the Blind and Print Disabled to ensure that its audiobooks can be downloaded through the Bard smartphone app. Quote, "We want to ensure that it's as good as Audible," Fallon said. "And that's the other thing. If something is available on Audible, we won't produce it because, why duplicate efforts and use our resources to create something that's already available," unquote. Yet certain materials are better suited to different formats. Mass propers, which people want to bring to church, are produced in Braille and large print rather than audio. The reintroduction of large print materials has proven particularly significant. Quote, "We reintroduced large print. both the Bible in large print and the Mass propers in large print, because many of our patrons, as they age, they're experiencing sight loss, but they're not going completely blind," unquote, Fallon said. The importance of Braille literacy. As debates continue in the blind community about whether Braille literacy remains necessary in an age of screen readers and text-to-speech technology, Fallon is unequivocal about its importance. Quote, "Reading Braille for a blind child is the same as reading a book for a sighted child, right?" he said. "It's very important for their intellectual development and their ability to learn, retain, understand what they're reading." Unquote. Unemployment rates among people who are blind remain significantly higher than those of the general population, making the society's free distribution model crucial. Quote, "Everything that we provide to our patrons, we provide free of charge," Fallon said. "So we rely on our fundraising and donations from foundations, from a number of Catholic and Catholic-affiliated foundations, and foundations that have an affinity for organizations that provide services to people with disabilities." Looking ahead to the future, Fallon sees the next 25 years focused on expanding outreach and partnerships. The Society recently moved into new office space with the JBI Library, formerly the Jewish Braille Institute. Quote, "Looking for opportunities to partner not only with JBI, but with other organizations across the country and around the world to do what we do better and reach more people," unquote. Quote, "What we do helps people of faith, mostly Catholics, learn about, develop, and practice their faith," Fallon said. "I always say Father Jamie is an embodiment of our mission. So it shows how our mission allows blind and visually impaired Catholics to actively practice their faith, which is really, really important to us." The Society's board reflects the community it serves, including blind members like Vice President Skylar Kovacic and Maribel Mira, who leads the Office of Ministry for the Deaf and Disabled with the Archdiocese of Washington, D.C. Quote, "We can't do it without the generosity of our benefactors," Fallon said. "Everything we do, everything we provide free of charge, which is unheard of these days, especially for an organization that's been around for 125 years. And if you have just joined us, you are listening to the holiday edition of the Blindness and Disability News Hour from Mind's Eye Radio. This program covers the week of December 21st, 2025. Thanks for joining us this week, and now let's get back to the program. Alrighty, right, folks. As we start out the second half of this week's program, let's pay a visit to the American Council of the Blind. And you can find them online at acb.org, And I hope you brought your appetite, because we've got some holiday recipes from our readers. Nothing says it's the holiday season better than the food. Whether it's an old family recipe for cookies, pie, green bean casseroles, or whatever, it wouldn't be the holiday season without it. And below are 8 of our readers' favorite holiday recipes. First comes corn casserole, submitted by Scott Thornhill. And the ingredients are 1 can of cream-style corn, 1 can of whole corn, undrained, 1 box of Jiffy corn muffin mix, 8 ounces of sour cream, 1 stick of butter or margarine melted, and 2 eggs slightly beaten. The method: mix it all together, pour into a 13-inch by 9-inch pan, and bake at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 45 to 55 minutes, and 325 if using a glass pan. You can add sugar to taste as well as cayenne pepper. If you have a big crowd coming, double the recipe. Next is chickpea salad. You need a half of a small red onion, finely chopped, 1/2 of green, red, and yellow peppers chopped, or a mix of all 3, 1 tablespoon of white vinegar, 1/4 cup of red wine vinegar, 1 clove garlic minced, sea salt and freshly ground black pepper, 2 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil, 1 can, that's 16 ounces, of chickpeas or garbanzo beans, drained, A third of a cup of diced sun-dried tomatoes packed in oil. I use a small can of diced tomatoes instead, drained, any flavor. 2 to 3 tablespoons of chopped fresh parsley or tarragon, and 1 tablespoon of fresh lemon juice. Bring a small saucepan of water to boil. Add the onion and cook 30 seconds. That's seconds. Drain and toss with the white wine vinegar. Mix together the red wine vinegar, garlic, salt, and pepper, and gradually whisk in the oil. Toss the chickpeas, the sun-dried tomatoes, and onion with the dressing and let marinate for 1 hour. Add the chopped parsley or tarragon and lemon juice, toss to mix, and serve at room temperature. And next we have cherry jello salad. 1 large package or 6 ounces of cherry jello, 2 cups of boiling water, 1 can or 20 ounces of crushed pineapple undrained, and 1 can 21 ounces of cherry pie filling. Mix it all together and refrigerate for several hours to let it set and cut into squares. Our next recipe is vegetable salad, and you can cut this one in half if you are serving a smaller group of people. The ingredients: 5 cups of chopped broccoli florets, 5 cups of chopped cauliflower florets, 2 cups of shredded cheddar cheese, 1/2 cup of raisins or cranberries, 2/3 of a cup of minced onion, 1/2 a cup of sugar, 1 cup of mayonnaise, 2 tablespoons of red wine vinegar or raspberry vinegar, 6 bacon strips cooked and crumbled or 1/2 cup of bacon bits, and 1/4 cup of shelled toasted sunflower seeds. And the method: chop the broccoli and cauliflower into bite-sized pieces. In a large bowl, add vegetables, cheese, raisins, minced onions, and mix well. In another bowl, combine the sugar, the vinegar, and mayonnaise. Pour the dressing over the salad and toss until all vegetables are coated well. Sprinkle the bacon and sunflower seeds over the top. And a tip: this salad can be made ahead. Add the bacon and sunflower seeds just before serving. And from Brittany Piper and Simplistically Living, we have 3-ingredient pumpkin donuts. And this makes 20 donuts. You'll need piping bags, Domino powdered confectioner's sugar, pure Vermont maple syrup, canned organic pumpkin puree, Betty Crocker super moist spice cake mix, a Wilton non-stick 6-cavity donut baking pans, as many of them as you need for 20 of these, and cooking spray. And for the pumpkin donuts, use 1 box of spice cake mix, 15.25 ounces, 1 cup of pumpkin puree, and 1/3 of a cup of heavy cream. And for the maple glaze, use 1.5 cups of powdered sugar, 2 tablespoons of maple syrup, and 4 to 6 tablespoons of heavy cream. And the method: preheat the oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit and spray a donut pan with cooking spray. Mix together the cake mix, the pumpkin puree, and heavy cream in a large mixing bowl with a hand or stand mixer until combined. The batter will be thick. Use a piping bag, pipe the batter into each donut well, filling it about half full of batter. Bake for 12 to 15 minutes or until a toothpick comes out clean and the top of the donuts bounce back if gently tapped. Remove the donuts from the oven and allow them to cool for 3 to 5 minutes before turning them out onto a cooling rack. Add the donuts to cool completely and then make the glaze by whisking together the powdered sugar and maple syrup in a medium-sized mixing bowl. Gradually pour in the heavy cream, 1 tablespoon at a time, until you reach a thick, spreadable consistency. Spread the frosting on top of each of the donuts, serve, and enjoy. And if you're making mini donuts, bake at 350 degrees for 5 to 7 minutes. Next recipe is for pumpkin spice pancakes from the Seeing Eye, and this yields 8 to 10 pancakes. Celebrate autumn with these delicious pumpkin and spice pancakes topped with warm maple syrup and a dollop of fresh whipped cream. The ingredients: 2 cups of pancake mix of choice, 1 tablespoon of brown sugar, a half a teaspoon of cinnamon, a half a teaspoon of ground ginger, 1/2 teaspoon of nutmeg, and a quarter teaspoon of salt, 1 1/4 cups of milk or more as needed, and 3/4 cup of pure pumpkin puree. And the method: whip the cream. You also need whipped cream and pure maple syrup for your topping. In a large bowl, whisk together the pancake mix, the brown sugar, the cinnamon, ginger, nutmeg, and salt until well blended. In a separate bowl, combine the milk and pumpkin puree. Slowly add milk mixture to dry ingredients and stir until just combined. The batter should be thick and lumpy. Lightly grease the griddle with oil and heat on medium-high. Drop 1/3 cup of batter onto the griddle and cook about 90 seconds until the pancakes are golden on the bottom and bubbly on the top. Flip the pancakes and cook about 90 seconds more until the bottoms are browned. And serve with warmed maple syrup and a dollop of whipped cream. Next comes no-bake peppermint pie, reprinted from the Princess Pinky Girl. And you'll need 1 Oreo pie crust, 1 cup of heavy cream, 1 1/2 cups of powdered sugar, 2 8-ounce packages of cream cheese softened, 10 drops of red food coloring, 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract, 1 teaspoon of peppermint extract, a half a cup of peppermint candy or mince crushed, a tub of Cool Whip, crushed peppermint candy for decoration. Whip the heavy cream until the stiff peaks form and then set aside. Cream together the powdered sugar and cream cheese. Add the food coloring and vanilla and peppermint extract to the cream cheese and powdered sugar bowl and mix. Mix in the peppermint candy bits with the cream cheese and powdered sugar. Then add the powdered sugar cream cheese mixture to the bowl of heavy whipping cream and mix together on low speed until combined. Pour into the crust. Top the pie with Cool Whip and crushed peppermint. Chill for 1 to 2 hours or until ready to serve. And our final recipe, turtle cheesecake dip. And this was submitted by Nancy Christine Fila. Prep time is about 15 minutes, and the actual making time is about 1 hour and 15 minutes, including refrigerating. And it makes 26 servings, 2 tablespoons each. The ingredients: 30 Kraft caramels, 2 1/4 cups or about 3/4 of an 8-ounce tub of thawed Cool Whip divided, 2 ounces of Baker's semi-sweet chocolate chopped, 2 packages or about 8 ounces each of Philadelphia cream cheese softened, and 1 1/2 cups of chopped Planters pecans. Microwave the caramels and half a cup of Cool Whip in a medium microwavable bowl on high 1 minute and 40 seconds, stirring after 1 minute. Stir until caramels are completely melted and the sauce is well blended. Cool for 10 minutes. Meanwhile, microwave the chocolate and 3/4 cup of the remaining Cool Whip in a small microwavable bowl for 1 minute, stirring after 30 seconds. Stir until the chocolate is completely melted and the sauce is well blended. Beat the cream cheese in separate mixing bowl with mixer until creamy. Add 2/3 cup of caramel sauce and beat until blended. Gently stir in the remaining cup of Cool Whip. Spread cream cheese mixture onto the serving plate, drizzle with chocolate sauce and the remaining caramel sauce. Sprinkle with nuts. Refrigerate for 1 hour and serve with pretzel twists. As we continue with this week's edition of the Blindness and Disability News Hour, let's turn to one of our regulars, NLS Music Notes, from the National Library Service for the Blind and Print Disabled, and that's a service of the Library of Congress, and you can find them online at blogs.loc.gov. And this week's post, bit of a Christmas theme, but we're not too far beyond the holiday. Silver Bells. This is posted on December 22nd, and it's written by Juliet Appold. Quote, "It's Christmas time in the city," unquote, and beyond, and Silver Bells has certainly become a big part of its soundscape. The song has a catchy tune and easy-to-remember lyrics and illustrates a great songwriting team, Ray Evans and Jay Livingston. In this blog, let's explore the story of the song and its creators. Ray Evans, who lived from 1915 to 2007, and Jay Livingston, 1915 to 2001, both grew up in small towns. Jay was born in McDonald, Pennsylvania, 15 miles southwest of Pittsburgh, and Ray was born in Salamanca, New York. Both loved music and spent a lot of time listening to the radio. They both attended the University of Pennsylvania. Jay studied journalism and took classes in musical composition. Ray studied finance and attended the Wharton School of Business. Both were amateur musicians and played in the college orchestra called the Continentals. That orchestra performed on cruise ships during Easter and summer vacations. This is where the two musicians connected and became friends, especially while on a cruise that brought them to Cuba. In Havana, they bought themselves Cuban instruments and started playing them on the ship. Apparently, the cruise director heard them, loved it, and asked them to keep going. In fact, he was so enthusiastic about the duo that he offered them to play on any future cruises they wanted. This enabled the pair to explore the world and start a musical duo as college students. Having gotten a taste for playing together after their last cruise, Ray suggested to Jay that they should stay in New York and become songwriters. They gave it a shot. Jay would write the melodies and make the musical arrangements, and Ray would write the lyrics. For several years, the only way this was sustainable was to work some jobs during the day. In the beginning, Jay made his living as a piano accompanist and Ray as an accountant, and they wrote their songs at night. It was when they started composing for Broadway, specifically for the comedians Olson and Johnson, that their careers as songwriters gained momentum. One of the first songs they wrote was Goodbye for Now for the show Hell's a Poppin'. Played by Horace Heights Orchestra in 1941, Goodbye Now made it into the top 10 hit records and ranked number 51 in the 1941 U.S. Billboard Top 100. That put the composing team on the map. World War II put a short break on the musician's career. From 1942 to 1943, Jay enlisted in the Army, and Ray worked in an aircraft factory. They got back together afterwards and continued writing songs. It then so happened that Olson and Johnson asked Ray and Jay to come to Hollywood in 1944. And this is where their career really took off, with them being introduced to the movie scene and being given a chance to write songs for various motion picture companies. Starting in 1945, they worked for 10 years with Paramount Studios. During that time, they were nominated for several Oscars and won 2 of the desired trophies. The first nomination was for the song The Cat and the Canary. They won their first prestigious Academy Award for Buttons and Bows, written for the movie The Paleface in 1948. The second Oscar was for the most famous song, Mona Lisa, and was featured in Captain Carey USA in 1950. Then, 6 years later, in 1956, they received their third Oscar for the song Que Sera, Sera, featured in the famous Hitchcock movie of 1956, The Man Who Knew Too Much, starring James Stewart and Doris Day. While Silver Bells did not receive an Oscar, it may be the one song that is best known and permanently established in the Christmas song repertoire. In 1950, Paramount Studios asked Ray Evans and Jay Livingston to write a Christmas song for a movie called The Lemon Drop Kid, featuring Bob Hope. Both musicians felt very skeptical about such a project because so many traditional songs already existed. In fact, at the age of 91, Ray Evans still remembered in an interview, quote, "Well, we had no enthusiasm for writing a Christmas song because we figured that the world had too many Christmas songs already. We shared an office with 2 desks, and on one of the desks there was a little bell. We said, 'Oh, there's our theme for Christmas, and the bell makes a tinkling sound when it's ringing, so we'll call our song Tinkle Bell,'" unquote. After finishing the song, Jay went home to his wife, who, in her typical manner, would ask him, "Well, what did you do in school today?" And Jay answered, "We wrote a Christmas song called Tinkle Bell," to which he immediately responded, "Do you know what tinkle means to most people? You can't have a song with the word tinkle in it. Don't you know what the word tinkle means?" And that's how the title was changed to Silver Bells. Decca Records released the first recording of the song, featuring Bing Crosby and Carol Richards, with John Scott Trotter and his orchestra and the Lee Gordon Singers, in October of 1950. The movie The Lemon Drop Kid was released in 1951. Ray and Jay continued working in Hollywood and wrote music for 100 movies. When their first big contract with Paramount expired in 1955, Jay and Ray freelanced for other Hollywood studios and wrote many songs and film scores until 1966. Among the famous songs that they wrote are Next to Mona Lisa and Que Sera Sera, The Cat and the Canary, Tammy, Almost in Your Arms, and of course, Silver Bells. Additionally, they wrote the theme songs for the television shows Bonanza and Mr. Ed. Many of their songs have each sold over 1 million records or more. Ray Evans papers and other primary source documents are held at the Ray and Win Ritchie Evans Foundation in California and at the University of Pennsylvania. If you'd like to learn to play Silver Bells or any of the other songs, check out the resources that I'll read to you below. You can download most of them from Bard, and to borrow hard copy Braille scores or musical audio instruction materials on digital cartridge, please contact the NLS Music section either by phone at 1-800-424-8567 extension 2 or email us at nlsm@loc.gov. First, we have audio music instruction on a couple of songs. Both of these are from Bill Brown, Piano by Ear, Silver Bells in cartridge only at DBM 03741, and Mona Lisa, Piano by Ear at DBM 03461. Next, in audio music appreciation, Give It All You've Got, an interview with Jay Livingston and Ray Evans at DBM 00625. And we have some Braille scores. First, a selection of them for Silver Bells, for guitar and voice in the 666 Fake Songbook at BRM 24360, for piano in Christmas Piano Solos Level 4 arranged by Fred Kern at BRM 28164, for beginner piano in Piano Solos Primer Level by Jane Smizer Bastian at BRM 24694, for violin in the Big Book of Christmas Songs, BRM 37649, for violin in Christmas Songs at BRM 36637, and finally for organ and other instruments in Christmas Songs, vocal with words, guitar chords, and melody for organ, piano, guitar, and chord organ at BRM 27964. Next is Mona Lisa for voice and piano at BRM 23395, and for voice and piano in Nat King Cole Unforgettable, BRM 36841. And then there's Que Sera Sera, Whatever Will Be, for voice and piano at call sign BRM 34930, for organ in the Complete Organ Player, Book 3 by Kenneth Baker, at BRM 29397, for ukulele in the Daily Ukulele, 365 Songs for Better Living, at BRM 35979, and finally the song Tammy for voice and piano at BRM 33761. And finally, 2 songs in large print scores. Que Sera Sera for piano in Popular Waltz Favorites at LPM 00376. And finally, our featured song Silver Bells for piano in Christmas Songs at LPM 00330. The National Federation of the Blind partners with 11 labs to transform accessible reading, empowering choice in how stories are heard. The following is the text of a press release that was recently issued by the National Federation of the Blind. The National Federation of the Blind, or NFB, is proud to announce a partnership with 11 Labs, bringing the innovative 11 Reader platform to blind readers across the United States. This collaboration represents a major step forward in accessible technology, offering emotionally rich narration that empowers choice in how stories are heard. Text-to-speech tools are not new for blind people. However, 11 Labs enhances the experience with options for the readers. By using advanced AI technology to deliver natural human-like voices, including celebrity voices, for books, newsletters, and other content, users can select from a wide range of voices and upload their own materials, creating a personalized reading experience. Quote, access to information has always been at the heart of our movement, and this partnership with 11 Labs represents the kind of innovation that happens when we prioritize the authentic needs and preferences of blind people, said Mark Riccobono, president of the National Federation of the Blind. 11 Reader gives blind readers real options in how they experience content. The ability to choose from natural-sounding voices, personalize the reading experience, and upload our own materials means that we are active participants in shaping how we consume information. As part of this partnership, premium access to 11 Reader is available at no cost to members of the National Federation of the Blind. This benefit underscores NFB's commitment to ensuring that blind individuals have access to cutting-edge tools that enhance independence and inclusion. To access this benefit, create or log into an 11 Reader account and then visit 11reader.io/NFB. And that about wraps up the holiday edition of the Blindness and Disability News Hour. This program covers the week of December 21st, 2025. My name is Bill. Thanks for joining us this week. This program, as always, is a production and presentation of Mind's Eye Radio in Belleville, Illinois. And everyone here at Mind's Eye would like to wish you a safe and Merry Christmas. Stay safe, be good. Take care of your pets. See you. Bye.
Coming up next on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have history. From our friends at IAAIS. At 11 o'clock, we get Adirondack Life. And then at noon, we have Short Shot. It's 3 short stories from Arthur Truman Capote. Stay with us for these readings and more.
This program is intended for a print-impaired audience and is brought to you by Mind's Eye.
Hello. Welcome to the history segment. It is the week of December 22nd. Really appreciate you joining, and certainly appreciate you joining this year. It's been a interesting year as we look back. There's certainly been a number of changes in both content and direction and types of articles, so we do appreciate feedback. If you've got a couple things that you just looked at and said, you know what, I really wish they'd do this, or I really wish they wouldn't do that, please give us a call, 618-394-6444, or send me an email, feedback@mindseyeradio.org. It is always appreciated. So this week we're going to do our What Happened on This Day in History. We're going to go back for this week. Then we're also going to look at some articles. I think I shared with you that History Magazine, BBC production, really gave us a very nice magazine this year around Christmas, and it's basically the history of Christmas. Lots and lots and lots of good articles, more than what I could read. So very, very happy to have that. We're going to go through and go into a number of articles from there. We're also, if we get a minute, we're going to look at a couple of the weird and wonderful gifts that Elvis gave his friends. So I found it very entertaining, and I think you will too. December 22nd, year 69, Emperor Vitellius is captured and murdered in the stairs in Rome. 1807, the Embargo Act forbidding trade with all foreign countries is passed by the U.S. Congress at the urging of President Thomas Jefferson. 1864, Savannah, Georgia, what a great city, by the way, falls to General William Tecumseh Sherman, concluding his march to the sea. 1942, World War II, Adolf Hitler signs the order to develop the V-2 rocket as a weapon. 1944, World War II, Battle of the Bulge. German troops demand the surrender of United States troops at Bastogne, Belgium, prompting the famous one-word reply by General Anthony McAuliffe, and that is nuts. 1964, the first test flight of SR-71 Blackbird took place at the Air Force Plant 42 in Palmdale, California. 1989, Berlin's Brandenburg Gate reopens after nearly 30 years, effectively ending the division of East and West Germany. 2001, political leader of Afghan North Alliance, Rabini, hands over power in Afghanistan to the interim government headed by President Hamid Karzai. 2001, Richard Reed attempts to destroy a passenger airliner by igniting explosives hidden in his shoes aboard American Flight 63. And for many years when I was flying, we always had to take our shoes off and put them in those little gray bins. 2010, the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy, the 17-year-old policy banning on homosexuals serving openly in the United States military, is signed into law by President Barack Obama. December 23, 1823, visit from St. Nicholas, also known as The Night Before Christmas, is published anonymously. 1893, the opera Hansel and Gretel by Engelbert Humperdinck is first performed. 1913, the Federal Reserve Act is signed into law by President Woodrow Wilson, creating the Federal Reserve. 1947, the transistor is first demonstrated at Bell Laboratories. Wow. 1958, dedication of the Tokyo Tower, the world's highest self-supporting iron tower. 1968, the 82 sailors from the USS Pueblo are released after 11 months of internment in North Korea. 1986, Voyager, piloted by Dick Rutan and Gianna Yeager, lands at Edwards Air Force Base in California, becoming the first aircraft to fly non-stop around the world without aerial or ground refueling. 2002, an MQ-1 Predator shot down by an Iraqi MiG-25, marking the first time in history that an aircraft and an unmanned drone had engaged in combat. That was back in 2002. What happened in December 24th? 1777. Kirimati, also called Christmas Island, is discovered by James Cook. 1818. The first performance of Silent Night takes place in the Church of St. Nicholas in Obendorf, Austria. Love that song. 1826. The Eggnog riot at U.S. Military Academy begins that night, wrapping up the following morning. 1851. Library of Congress burns. 1906, radio. The Reginald Fessenden transmits the first radio broadcast consisting of poetry reading, a violin solo, and a speech. Probably a politician. Okay, 1913, the Italian Hall disaster. 1913 massacre, parentheses, in Calumet, Michigan, results in the deaths of 73 Christmas partygoers held by striking mine workers, including 59 children. 1914, the World War I, the Christmas truce begins. 39, World War II, Pope Pius VII makes a Christmas Eve appeal for peace. 1943, World War II, U.S. General Dwight D. Eisenhower becomes Supreme Allied Commander. 1955, NORAD tracks Santa for the first time in what will become an annual Christmas tradition. 1964, Vietnam War, Viet Cong operatives bomb the Brinks Hotel in Saigon to demonstrate that they can strike an American installation in a heavily guarded capital. 1968, Apollo program. The crew of Apollo 8 enters into the orbit around the moon, becoming the first humans to do so. They performed 10 lunar orbits and broadcast live TV pictures that become the famous Christmas Eve broadcast, one of the most watched programs in history. 1980, witnesses report the first of several sightings of unexplained lights near RAF Woodbridge in Suffolk, England, in an incident called Britain's Roswell. December 25th, years 1000, the foundation of the Kingdom of Hungary. Hungary is established as a Christian kingdom by Stephen I of Hungary. 1914, World War I, known as the Christmas Truce. German and British troops on the Western Front temporarily cease fire. 1950, the Stone of Scone. It's easy to say, Stone of Scone. Traditional coronation stone of British monarchs is taken from Westminster Abbey by Scottish nationalist students. It later turns up in Scotland on April 11th, 1951. 1968, Apollo 8 performs the very first trans-Earth injection maneuver, which is known as a TEI maneuver. It sends the crew and the spacecraft on a trajectory back to Earth from lunar orbit. 1990, the first successful trial run of the system, which would become the World Wide Web. 1991, Mikhail Gorbachev resigns as president of the Soviet Union, and the Union itself is dissolved the next day. Ukraine's referendum is finalized, and Ukraine officially leaves the Soviet Union. That's 1991. The ill-fated Beagle 2 probe, 2003, released from the Mars Express spacecraft on December 19th, disappears shortly before its scheduled landing. On the 26th, 1862, 4 nuns serving as volunteer nurses aboard the USS Red Rover are the first female nurses on a U.S. hospital ship. 1898, Marie and Pierre Curie announced the isolation of radium. 1944, World War II, Patton's Third Army breaks the encirclement of surrounded U.S. forces at Bastogne. 1976, the Communist Party of Nepal, which is, by the way, Marxist-Leninist in parentheses, is founded. 1982, Times Man of the Year, for the first time, a non-human personal computer. Does AI get it this year? 1991, the Supreme Soviet of the Soviet Union meets and formally dissolves the Soviet Union. 1994, 4 armed Islamic group hijackers seize control of Air France Flight 8969. When the plane lands at Marseille, The French gendarme assaults and boards the aircraft and kills the perpetrators. 1998. Iraq announces its intention to fire upon the U.S. and British warplanes that patrol the northern and southern no-fly zones. 2004, Orange Revolution. The final runoff election in Ukraine is held under heavy international scrutiny. 2006, oil pipeline in Lagos, Nigeria explodes, killing 260. 27th of December, 1845, ether anesthetic is used for childbirth for the first time by Dr. Crawford Williamson Long in Jefferson, Georgia. 1918, the Great Poland Uprising against the German begins. 1932, Radio City Music Hall opens in New York, New York. 1945, the World Bank and International Monetary Fund are created with the signing of an agreement by 29 nations. 1968, yes, we're going back to Apollo 8. It splashes down in the Pacific Ocean, ending the first orbital manned mission to the moon. 1978, Spain becomes a democracy after 40 years of dictatorship. 1979, the Soviet Union invades the Democratic Republic of Afghanistan. 1985, Palestinian guerrillas kill 18 people inside Rome, Italy, and Vienna, and Austria airports. 1996, Taliban forces retake the strategic Bagram air base, in which it solidifies the buffer zone around Kabul. 2008, Israel launches a 3-week operation on Gaza known as the Operation Cast Lead. The 28th, year's 1065, the Westminster Abbey is consecrated. 1308, the reign of Emperor Hanazono, Emperor of Japan, begins. 1832, John C. Calhoun becomes first Vice President of the United States to resign. 1867, United States claims Midway Atoll, the first territory annexed outside the continental limits. 1895, the Lumiere brothers perform their first paying audience at the Grand Cafe in the Boulevard de Capuchinos, marking the debut of cinema. 1958, the greatest game ever played. Baltimore Colts defeat the New York Giants in the first ever National Football League sudden death overtime game at the New York's Yankee Stadium. 1978, with the crew investigating a problem on landing gear, United Airlines Flights 173 runs out of fuel and crashes in Portland, Oregon, killing 10. As a result, United Airlines instituted the industry's first crew resource management program. 2000, the U.S. retail giant Montgomery Ward announces it is going out of business after 128 years. 2009, 43 people die in a suicide bombing in Karachi, Pakistan, where Shia Muslims are observing the day of Ashura. 2010, Arab Spring. Popular protests begin in Algeria against the government. And that concludes our What Happened This Day in History segment. So last week, we started an article, 10 Ways Christmas Was Celebrated During the First World War. 'Tis the season, peace on earth and goodwill to all men. But how did the festive period fare during the First World War? This is the story of how British Christmas adapted from 1914 to 18 by Hannah Scully. We read the first one that talked about how you were to shop for Christmas gifts and give them to the soldiers who were on the front lines. The second part of this article is sending messages and gifts to the front. With so many men and women spending Christmas away from home, the demand for parcels at Christmas was greater than ever. Over the entire course of the war, the Army Postal Service sent 114 million parcels from Britain to conflict zones and 2 billion letters. Army postmen were dubbed Santa Claus in khaki, as they labored to deliver the packages with care to the front line and bring messages home in time for Christmas. Back in Britain, families were sending food, clothing, cigarettes, and tobacco. Charities also rallied the British public to show their support for the troops, sending Christmas gifts en masse. Footballs, harmonicas, books, cigarettes, and even Christmas puddings were sent in bulk. Christmas 1914, Princess Mary, daughter of George V, launched her own charitable Christmas initiative, a metal case of cigarettes for every soldier in the Army. Non-smokers' boxes contained a packet of acid tablets, khaki writing case, paper, and pencil. Every box also contained a Christmas card and a picture of the princess. Number 3, traveling home on leave. Christmas leave for soldiers was an uncommon stroke of luck. In some cases, it was simply determined by drawing lots. Soldiers on relatively looked after on the journey home from the front thanks to the activity of wartime charities. Women volunteered to serve tea at railway stations to anyone in uniform, and special Army club rooms and YMCA huts gave soldiers shelter en route. If the soldiers couldn't make it home in time for Christmas Day, the charities would throw cheerful Christmas celebrations for them instead. Anything to help keep the morale high at a time of fear, anxiety, and unease for the whole nation. Number 4, making do in the trenches. The Western Front. The Christmas truce of 1914 is legendary as a moment of festive goodwill. An unofficial ceasefire allowed soldiers along the Western Front to emerge from the trenches, meet enemy combatants, exchange gifts, and even play games. A story of a Christmas football truce match taking place between two warring sides in no man's land has almost become mythical, and it was even immortalized in a Christmas advert for Sainsbury in 2014. Yet, despite there being very little in the way of surviving evidence, arguments as to whether or not this remarkable act of camaraderie took place continue to rage. Keen to present an official positive view of the war, the British press published photographs and illustrations of soldiers opening parcels from home or cheerfully cooking their Christmas pudding in a pot made from a German helmet. In reality, foul weather, flooded dugouts, constant danger took a toll on the Christmas spirit. A cartoon from the soldier artist Bruce Barnes' father represented what was for many a time less cheerful Christmas. The dawn of a glum Christmas day, far away from home, in a worn, torn landscape. Fear of mutiny meant that a truce rerun was strongly discouraged by Army authorities in subsequent years, but soldiers still marked each Christmas as it arrived in the trenches with Christmas parcels and extra rations. Number 5, Christmas refugee shelters. War-torn Europe meant the mass displacement of civilian populations. About 250,000 Belgian refugees sheltered in Britain during the war. With Belgians receiving sympathetic treatment in the press, British support for their plight was considerable in the first years of the war. Thousands of charitable enterprises were launched to help them, from large committees and organizations to newspaper subscriptions. In 1914, the Bystander launched an appeal for Christmas presents from their readers. Over 1,000 toys have been personally distributed among Belgian refugee children, now being looked after in English homes and hostels. What about the ships? Number 6, Christmas in the Navy. Christmas at sea came with its own traditions, and those serving in the Royal Navy during the war, some 380,000 people by 1918. Their Christmas was formal and highly regulated in comparison with the forces on land. After a religious service on the ship, the men would assemble in their messes with decorated tables. Here they were visited by captains and officers who would take a seat at each table, in turn sampling the food they had prepared. Many were serving on ships in the North Sea, where stormy winter weather could make for a lively Christmas celebration. Harcourt Kitchen, who served in the Royal Marines on convoy duty, recalled Christmas 1917. We struck very bad seas on the way out, and all the fresh food disappeared. We had a Christmas dinner of salt pork and rice, which wasn't very appetizing. Number 7, Christmas in the hospital. Both in Britain and in war zones, many servicemen and women spent their Christmas in military hospitals. A bright, cheerful, healing environment was central to medical ethos. And at Christmas, hospital staff went to the particular effort to decorate the wards and entertain the wounded. Wounded servicemen were so well treated at a hospital in Rochdale during Christmas 1916 that, according to signaller Leonard Owensworth, a number of them who had been discharged the week before Christmas came back to the hospital for Christmas dinner during their leave. A bittersweet Christmas at home, number 8. Christmas on the home front may have been more comfortable, but civilians were still feeling the impact of the war. In December 1914, Britain experienced its first attacks. Scarborough, Whitby, and Hartlepool were bombed on 16 December, and 137 people were killed. A German aircraft then dropped 2 bombs into the sea in Dover 5 days later before another attack on the 24th hit a civilian's garden and broke several windows. Apart from the shock of such direct attacks, absent loved ones made for a difficult Christmas during the war. Having them home on leave was a special wartime gift. The Christmas of 1915 was one of particularly happy surprises. Delays in the post meant that some families did not get the morning of their loved one's arrival until they appeared at the door. By 1917, however, the national mood was low. On December 23rd, the Observer noted, "It is the 4th Christmas of the war, and for many it's going to be very quiet, if not a sad one. For the first time, though we are making the best of things, Christmas has lost its festive air." Number 9, in the papers. Newspapers were the main source of public information about the progression of the war and the welfare of those fighting. At Christmas, as in pre-war years, weekly papers such as the Illustrated London News and the Tatler produced annual Christmas issues. With beautiful images and short stories, these were careful to present a cheerful image of wartime festivities. Sentimental images of soldiers returning home, robins in the trenches, were aimed to integrate the experience of war with the spirit of Christmas. Number 10, in the theaters. Pantomimes were a major Christmas tradition before the war and continued throughout the conflict. During the war, they adapted popular interests, incorporating favorite war sing-alongs. It's a Long Way to Tipperary and Keep the Home Fires Burning were 2 popular ones. With the expensive scenery and raucous antics, much about them seemed at odds with the war efforts, but soldiers risked their lives at the front. They were absolutely, utterly British, and a cultural emblem of Christmas cheer and communal goodwill was the day. This was not merely escapism, but a concentrated effort to lift spirits. As one theater review said in 1914, "Before you have been long at the Drury Lake pantomime, you will feel with even more certainty that when you entered the building, we are going to win this war." End of article. So one of the things I really enjoy about, reading history is that it gives you a different view into something similar that you're familiar with, but under different conditions, and it really happened. So in this article, it's entitled "No Christmas Under Cromwell?" During the Civil War, and this is Britain, there was a popular resistance to the Puritan assault on Christmas. So what would the festive period have looked like in the mid-17th century, and how did people react to its abolition? This is an article written by Mark Stoyle. It begins, "As the year 1645 limped towards its weary close, a war-torn England shivered beneath a thick blanket of snow. A few months earlier, Parliament's new model army, led by Sir Thomas Fairfax and Oliver Cromwell, had routed the forces of Charles I at the Battle of Naseby. Although the defeat had struck the king's cause a mortal blow, the royalists still refused to surrender, and the bloody civil war, which divided the country ever since 1642, continued to rage. Under the constant pressure from the armies of both sides to supply them with money, clothing, and food, few Englishmen and women have been anticipating a particularly Merry Christmas. Yet, for those who lived in the extensive territories which were controlled by the king's enemies, there was to be no Christmas this year at all because the traditional festivities had been abolished by the two houses of Parliament sitting at Westminster. From Charles's beleaguered wartime capital in Oxford, the royalist satirist John Taylor, now in his mid-60s, but nevertheless one of the king's most indefeatable literary champions, issued a cry of anguish at this assault in England's time-honored customs. All of the harmless sports with which people had long celebrated Christ's nativity are now extinct and put out of use, as if they had never been, Taylor lamented in his pamphlet, The Complaint of Christmas. And thus, the merry lords of misrule suppressed by the mad lords of bad rule at Westminster. So why the parliamentarians decided to wage war on Christmas, and how did those, like Taylor, who were determined to defend the traditional celebrations, fight back? The attack on the Feast of Christmas had deep roots. Long before the Civil War, many zealous Protestants or Puritans had been troubled both by the boisterous nature of the festivities which took place at Christmas and the perceived association of those festivities with the old Catholic faith. During the early 1600s, most Puritans had prepared to tolerate Christmas. Following the rebellion of the Presbyterian Scots against Charles I in 1637, this was all about to change. The Scottish Kirk, which itself fiercely Protestant, had abolished Christmas as long ago as 1560s, although James I had managed to tentatively restore the feast in his northern kingdom in 1617. It was banned there once again after his son's defeat by the Scots in 1640. From this time onwards, attitudes towards Christmas among the English Puritans began to harden. And as political tensions between Charles I and his opponents in Parliament rose during 1641, so a handful of Puritan extremists took it upon themselves to abandon the celebration of Christmas. Following the outbreak of full-scale civil war between the king and the Parliament in 1642, John Taylor became one of the first to allude in print to the radicals' decision to dump Christmas. In a satirical pamphlet published in 1643, a pamphlet which was clearly intended to appeal to a wide audience, Taylor provided his readers with a text of a tub lecture which he claimed had been preached by a godly joiner to a group of Puritans at Watford on the 25th of December last, being Christmas Day. In this fictitious address, the lecturer is shown assuring his audience that they should not conceive of me to be so superstitious as to make any conscience of this day, because the church hath ordained it to be a holy feast. No, God forbid I should be so profane, the lecturer goes on. Rather, it is a detestation of their blindness that have brought me hither to this day to enlighten you, and I give to you to understand that the very name of Christmas is adulterous and profane, and so verily the whole 12 days of Christmas, and wherein the wicked make daily sacrifices to rot and sensuality. Here, Taylor was hinting to his readers that the godly parliamentarians posed a threat to Christmas itself. 8 months later, the threat was to become all too real. Seizing the initiative. One of the clauses of the Solemn League and Covenant, which Parliament signed with the Scots in 1643, stated that in exchange for Scottish military assistance against the king, MPs would further ensure that reformation of the Church of England took place. As Ronald Hutton had observed, this clause encouraged religious radicals on the ground to seize the initiative to attack those aspects of the traditional ecclesiastical calendar which they disliked. 3 months later, a number of Puritan tradesmen in London opened up their shops for business on December 25th in order to show that they regarded this day as no different than any other, while several London ministers kept their church doors firmly shut. Meanwhile, many MPs turned up to sit in the Parliament House, thus making their own disdain for the customary Christmas holiday very clear. During the following year, moreover, when Christmas Day happened to coincide with one of the monthly fast days upon which the Parliament supporters were enjoined to pray for success of their cause, MPs ordered not only that the fast day should be observed instead of a traditional feast, but also the fast should be kept within the more solemn humiliation, because it may call for the remembrance of our sins and the sins of our forefathers who turned this feast, pretending to be the memory of Christ, into an extreme forgetfulness of him by giving liberty to carnal and sensual delights. In January 1645, the final nail was hammered into Christmas's coffin when the Parliament issued its new directory for the public worship of God, a radical alternative to the established Book of Common Prayer, which made no reference to Christmas at all. Thus, the way was paved for the anti-Christmas of 1645, a day in which, in Taylor's words, a man might pass right through the parliamentary quarters and perceive no sign or token of any holy day. At this point in the article, they take a quick break and they have a section that describes what Christmas was like before the Civil War in the early 1600s. Some of the ways it was celebrated were decorating houses, churches, and other buildings with boughs of holly, ivy, rosemary, and bay. They took Christmas Day off. Many people went further than this, took the next 11 days. They attended church services. They sung carols, dancing to music. They feasted on all sorts of rich food, including roast beef, brawn, Christmas pies, plum pottage, which was a porridge. Imbibing in alcoholic drinks, including lamb's wool, which was a mixture of ale, roasted apple, sugar, and spice. And then we had that Lord of Misrule, which we talked about last week. Presenting friends and relatives with gifts on Christmas Day was also common. The article continues. The parliamentarians had abolished the high point of English ritual year, and the cancellation of Christmas aroused huge popular resentment, not just in the Royalist camp, but in the districts controlled by the Parliament too. As early as December 1643, the apprentice boys of London rose up in violent protest against the shopkeepers who had opened on Christmas Day, and in the words of a delighted royalist, forced those money changers to shut their shops again. There were further dark mutterings next year. On December 24th, 1644, the editor of a pro-parliamentarian news pamphlet expressed his support for the MP's decision to favor the monthly fast over the traditional feast, but admitted that Parliament is cried out on by the common people, and as a result, with the incredulous shouts of, "What, not keep Christmas? Here's a reformation in need." Many Londoners continued to show a dogged determination to keep Christmas special during the following year, and Taylor's decision to rush into print at this time with his Complaint of Christmas, a work which bore the same title as a pamphlet urging enthusiastic observance of Midwinter Feast, which he had published as long ago as 1631, it was clearly motivated by a desire to stir up popular resentment against the parliamentarian leadership, as well as turn a quick profit for its poverty-stricken author. How far Taylor succeeded in these aims, it's impossible to say, but his satire quickly provoked a parliamentarian counter-satire entitled The Arrangement, Conviction, and Imprisoning of Christmas. Published in January 1646, this publication took great pleasure in conflating Taylor himself with the symbolic character of Old Christmas Day, whose persona the Royalist writers had assumed in his previous pamphlets. In one passage, Taylor, Old Christmas Day, here described as an old, very old, gray-bearded gentleman, is portrayed sitting dejectedly in the midst of the king's shrinking territories, while desperately urging, "All that you ever think to see Christmas again, stick to me close." any lingering hopes on the part of the royalists that popular anger at the abolition of Christmas might somehow transform their military fortunes were soon to be dispelled. During 1646, Charles I's remaining field forces melted away almost as fast as the winter snow, and by April, the game was clearly up for the king. In the closing verse of a contemporary ballad, a gloomy royalist writer suggests that the collapse of the king's cause had sealed the fate of Christmas itself, remarking, "To conclude, I'll tell you news that's right. Christmas was killed at Naseby fight." Yet, matters were not so simple, for even the king's armies had been beaten out of the field and he himself had fallen into the hands of his enemies. Most Englishmen and women continued to cling to their traditional Christmas customs. So strong was the popular attachment to the old festivities, indeed, that during the post-war period, a number of pro-Christmas riots occurred. In December of 1646, for example, a group of young men at Bury St. Edmunds threatened local tradesmen who had dared to open their shops on Christmas days and were only dispersed by the town's magistrates after a bloody scuffle. Pro-Christmas riots. Worse to follow in 1647, despite the fact that on 10 June that year, Parliament had passed an ordinance which declared the celebration of Christmas to be a punishable offense. On December 25th, 1647, there was further trouble at Bury, while pro-Christmas riots took place at Norwich and Ipswich. During the course of the Ipswich riot, a protester named Christmas was reportedly slain, a fatality which could have been regarded as richly symbolic, of course, in the way that Parliament had killed Christmas itself. In London, a crowd of apprentices assembled on Cornwich on Christmas Day, and there was despite of authority, they set up holly and ivy on the pinnacles of the public water conduit. When the Lord Mayor dispatched some officers to pull down those gauds, the apprentices resisted them, forcing the mayor to rush to the scenery with a party of soldiers to break up the demonstration by force. The worst of these disturbances all took place at Canterbury, where a crowd of protesters first smashed up the shops which had been opened on Christmas Day and then went on to seize control of the entire city. This riot helped pave the way for a major insurrection in Kent in 1648 that itself formed part of the Second Civil War, a scattered series of uprisings against the Parliament and in favor of the king, which Fairfax and Cromwell only managed to suppress with great difficulty. Following Parliament's victory in the Second Civil War, the execution of Charles I in 1649, demonstrations in favor of Christmas became less common. There can be no doubt that many people continued to celebrate Christmas in private. In his pamphlet, The Vindication of Christmas, in 1652, the tireless John Taylor provided a lively portrait of how he claimed the old Christmas festivities were still being kept up by the farmers of Devon. Nevertheless, recent scholarship has shown as time went by, Christmas effectively ceased to be celebrated in the great majority of the churches. It was ironic, too, to say the least, that the godly had failed to suppress the secular Yuletide festivities which had vexed them for so long. They had been succeeding in ending the religious observance of Christmas. Following Cromwell's installation as Land Our Lord Protector in 1653, the celebration of Christmas continued to be prescribed. While he had not been personally responsible for canceling Christmas in the first place, it is evident that both Cromwell and the other senior members of his regime were behind the ban, frequently transacting government business on December 25th as if it were just like any other day. Only with restoration of the monarchy in 1660 was the old Christmas Day finally brought back from the cold to widespread popular joy. John Taylor had died some years before, but if he could have foreseen that 2 centuries later, Charles Dickens would be reprising the role in which Taylor made his own, that of the mouthpiece of true Christmas spirit. And that, more than a century and a half later, still the celebration of Christmas would remain as ubiquitous in England and Wales as ever, and he doubtless would have felt that his labors would have been worthwhile. The defenders of Christmas had weathered the storm. End of article. So last week we read part 1 of a Christmas Q&A, and in that they talked about the Lord of Misrule, some of the strangest Christmas traditions that have now gone out of fashion. Another one was that if you took the biggest log on the hearth and save a fragment of it, it would protect their house from fire and lightning. Also, there was one where young men and women would throw food at a wall during Christmas dinner to see if the grub that stuck spelled out the name of their future spouse. Okay. I also had holming, where young men and boys hit women on their arms with holly branches until they drew blood. And then also others were beating the last person to get out of bed on Boxing Day. So really strange Christmas traditions that have thankfully now gone out of fashion. So the second part of this article by Eugene Byrne is entitled Christmas Q&A, the selection of historical conundrums answered by experts. Is it true that because of laws passed during the rule of Oliver Cromwell, it is still illegal to eat mince pies at Christmas? Now you see why we did the section on Cromwell first before this one. The article begins, no, it's not true and never was. Christmas was an important festival in the 17th century calendar, a 12-day event marked with sports, games, feasting, drinking, and traditional, as New Year, the exchange of gifts. Secret Catholics allegedly celebrated it with special enthusiasm. For Puritans, though, Christmas did not epitomize immoral excess and ungodly behavior. It was a relic of popery. In Civil War era London, and then in the interim parliaments, various laws were debated, though not always passed, and ordinance issued to stop the observance of traditional holy days, including Christmas. But Christmas continued to be celebrated, and local authorities trying to enforce the ban were often met with such disorder. The plum pudding riots that broke out in Canterbury in 1647, for example. The laws and ordinances prescribing the celebration of Christmas that do not mention mince pies, which were probably also eaten at other times during the winter. Even if Parliament had specifically outlawed mince pies, usually served as a single large dish as opposed to the little morsels that we see nowadays, ordinances concerning holy day observances were torn up at the Restoration in 1660 anyway. Yet, the idea that Cromwell banned mince pies is one unshakable urban legend, along with assertions that it's still illegal to kill Welshmen in Chester, or sticking a stamp on the monarch's head upside down is treason. Wow, things can get kind of goofed up, can't they? So all of this then kind of prompts the question, well, what did Christmas look like beforehand? There's an article entitled Tales from a Tudor Christmas. How did Henry VIII and Elizabeth I celebrate Yuletide? From a green-clad Father Christmas to Lord's Misrule and mince pies with real meat, here we provide a snapshot of Tudor festivities. It's Alison Weir, Siobhan Clarke, and that were the two writers. The article begins, the Protestant Reformation, triggered by Martin Luther in 1517, rocked European Christianity to its core. And it wasn't too long before the centuries-old tradition of celebrating Christmas would be caught in the crossfire. In the first half of the 16th century, it seemed that Christmas might emerge from these years of upheaval relatively unscathed. Luther permitted his followers to continue celebrating the festival while in England. King Henry VIII embraced Yuletide enthusiastically. One popular aspect of modern festivities, Father Christmas, was already in place in the Tudor period. In fact, He can be traced back as far as the Vikings, who often referred to their god Woden as Yule Father, believing he came down to earth at Yuletide, leaving gifts and spreading goodwill. However, by the 16th century, Father Christmas, or Old Christmas, and Old Man Winter, as he was also known, had become a favorite comic character in plays. With the modern Santa as a warm figure bedecked in red, in his 16th century predecessor was far more forbidding. Clad in green and wearing a grotesque mask and a wig, he would rampage about, shouting and brandishing a great club, exhorting his audience to behave themselves and maintain the old customs of Yuletide. Another larger-than-life character in Tudor Christmas was the Lord of Misrule, whose job it was to preside over the 12 days of merrymaking in aristocratic households. Everyone from the London mayor to Henry VIII himself, he employed one. The Lord of Misrule, sometimes known as Captain Christmas or Prince Christmas, was tasked with ensuring that everyone towed the line and made merry during the festive period. These helpers certainly took their job seriously, often carrying a mock giblet so that anyone who disobeyed them could be executed. Feasting was fundamental to the Tudor Christmas, especially if you were lucky enough to occupy the higher rungs of English social ladders. Kings and nobles often kept open house, offering a smorgasbord of entertainment through the 12 days of Christmas, which ran from Christmas Day until January 5th. That entertainment was inevitably the most lavish at the royal court, where there were 2 or 3 courses at every feast, each with a wide selection of dishes. None were more extravagant than those served up for Christmas dinner. Following the appetizer of plum porridge, the feasting would really begin with a boar's head, carried in ceremonially with the blast of trumpets. The second course comprised rich meats. Poultry was often served in its plumage, while the peacock in his pride and swan were particularly popular at court. Turkey first arrived from the New World in 1526, and it was established Christmas dish by the end of Elizabeth I's reign. Stuffing, known as forcemeat, was made with eggs, currants, pork, and herbs, was served with poultry from at least 1538 on. For dessert, diners would often tuck into fumeterie, a boiled wheat porridge flavored with milk and currants, which would later evolve into Christmas pudding. Mince pies, or Christmas pies as they were known, were made with shredded meat, suet, sugar, and spices. Often a pastry baby Jesus was placed on top. All of it was washed down with large quantities of Christmas ale and beer, sometimes finished off with a glass of mulled wine known as Hippocras, served just before bedtime. Anyone experiencing presents on Christmas morning in Tudor England, though, would not have been disappointed. New Year's Day, not December 25th, was best time for exchanging gifts, and it was a practice that Henry VIII and Elizabeth I embraced wholeheartedly. Both monarchs expect a present from each and every one of their courtiers and servants. Luckily, they weren't above buying gifts themselves, usually of gold, silver, or silver gilt plate, such as cups and bowls engraved with the royal cipher, each weighed according to rank. In one year, 1511, Henry VIII spent the equivalent of 400,000 francs on new presents. By January 1, the royal court was 8 days into the festive period, yet it seems the appetite for the extravagance and overindulgent was undimmed. The Tudor monarchs went into procession to chapel wearing their crowns and the royal robes lined with ermine, then presided over a great feast topped off with another night of revelry. However, New Year's Day was also a time for pondering your conduct over the past year and resolving to turn over a new leaf in the months ahead. The roots of modern tradition of making a New Year's resolution may lie in this century. Either way, It was certainly established by New Year's Eve, 1661, when the famous diarist Samuel Pepys wrote, "I have newly taken a solemn oath about abstaining from plays and wine, which I am resolved to keep according to the letter of the oath, which I keep with me." Within 3 weeks, Pepys broke it. Christmas took on a different tone during the reign of Henry VIII's son, Edward VI. Following in the footsteps of the reformer John Calvin, Edward sought to reclaim Christ's nativity, purged the abomination of the Catholic Mass and its obsession with graven images and iconography. Edward's Act of Uniformity, 1552, removed any vestiges of the Catholic faith, while his officials whitewashed medieval wall paintings, destroyed stained glass, and defaced images of saints. Christmas cribs and nativity scenes, too, began to disappear. The Christmas church service would also now be conducted entirely in English as opposed to Latin from the Book of the Common Prayer written by Thomas Cranmer, the reforming Archbishop of Canterbury in 1549. The reign of Mary I saw a return to the Latin liturgy, Christmas cribs, and nativity scenes, but these practices would not long outlive her. In the reign of Elizabeth I from 1558 to 1603, England again turned Protestant, although a few Catholic traditions remained, particularly in church music. With so many rituals of the old Roman Mass stripped away, it is a wonder that Christmas was celebrated at all in Tudor England. The simple reason for its survival was the popularity at all levels of society. End of article. So we're going to switch gears a little bit now, and we're going to look at the weird and wonderful gifts that Elvis gave his friends. When it came to presents, the king never did ordinary. This was written by Madison Horn and published on December 17th on History.com. And the article begins, Elvis Presley is widely regarded as one of the most significant cultural icons of the 20th century. Known as the King of Rock and Roll, his work has sold over 1 billion records, leaving behind an unforgettable legacy in American pop culture. This more intimate side of his life was photographed and commented on in Thomas Gilbert's book, Blue Suede Shoes, The Culture of Elvis. It goes beyond the familiar image of Presley as a superstar and highlights the gifts which he bestowed to those closest to him. Presley often traveled with his jeweler, Lowell Hayes, and would select pieces to give as gifts to friends, family, and even members of his entourage. Sometimes he even handed out jewelry during live shows to fans in the audience. Here are some of the thoughtful presents Presley gifted to his inner circle. First is an emerald ring. TV and radio broadcaster George Klein was one of those lucky jewelry recipients. The two met in 8th grade and remained lifelong friends. Presley's gifts to Klein included this gold, diamond, and emerald ring. Presley served as the best man at Klein's 1970 wedding, and Klein was the pallbearer at Presley's funeral in 1977. And it's basically a square ring that has one inner square of diamonds, then a very large emerald sitting in the middle of it, which serves as the focal point of this gold ring. It's beautiful. It's just really out there. Next one is an RCA belt buckle. So exactly as you might imagine, it is a brass belt buckle, and in the center of it is a kind of a Victrola type of phonograph, and it's RCA Nashville, and it's got the phonograph with the dog listening to it, and the caption is his master's voice. All of this is in the belt buckle. In 1957, RCA opened a recording studio in Nashville, Tennessee, where Presley often worked. Presley, known for his generosity during the holidays, often selected RCA-branded items. This RCA Victor belt buckle was a common Christmas gift he gave his friends during the 1960s. Interesting, but weird, different. Very different. Shows his appreciation of the brand. Next one is actually a record player. And back in those days, the record players were usually or often in boxes, and they had leather on the inside of them, and then you had the actual record player with the arm and the platter in the center of it. But the record player, Elvis put an inscription, and it was inside the lid on the leather, and it was a gift to his longtime friend Lou Harris. The two loved to relax together, go roller skating, watch movies, and take a ride on Presley's favorite roller coaster, the Zippin' Pippin in Memphis, Tennessee. So he gave him a record player and inscribed it personally. The next one, a little bit more common, it's the TCB necklace, created to commemorate one of Presley's favorite phrases. This TCB necklace stood for taking care of business. When he returned to performing concerts in 1969, Presley even named his rhythm section the TCB Band. Those TCB necklaces, often gold and diamond encrusted, were designed in collaboration with Lowell Hayes and Priscilla Presley. Elvis gifted them only to his closest friends and associates. And it's basically a large, gaudy gold chain with the initials TCB over basically a representation of a lightning bolt. Next one, Sonny sunglasses. Delbert Sonny West was among the longest-serving members of Elvis's entourage. The two met in 1958, and West became the famed part of the Memphis Mafia, the nickname Elvis gave his inner circle of friends, bodyguards, and aides. West was gifted this personalized pair of 14-karat gold sunglasses. Pretty cool. Next one is an eagle belt, and fellow performer Sonny Turner, lead singer of The Platter, was given this belt by Presley. It featured designs similar to Presley's own iconic eagle jumpsuits. Presley's eagle motif, which graced many of his patriotic stage costumes in the early 1970s, became a signature part of his Las Vegas and concert era identity. And it's basically a leather belt with lots of red background on it, and then eagles and eagle patches spread throughout the belt. Very interesting and, again, very eclectic. So that ends our look at Christmas articles for this week's Mind Eye. Next week, we will look into celebration of New Year's. And if you celebrate Christmas, I hope you have a very warm Christmas filled with family and fun. Take care. Thank you for listening.
Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have Adirondack Life. Following that at noon, we have a short shot that's 3 stories from Truman Capote. It's from our friends at the International Audio Association of Audio Information Services. And then following that at 1 o'clock, we have American History, also from our friends at IAAIS. Stay with us. The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision,